Beloved God, may these ancient words of our ancient spiritual partners be for us your word, your voice, your hope in our lives all this time later, enlivened by your Spirit and working in our lives. Amen. There's a little bit of normalcy returning to life. Can you feel it? A little bit? Not that the pandemic is over, not by any means, but as we continue to learn more and more about COVID, as more of us are vaccinated, and won't it be a great day when the children are included, as more of us return to our offices, as children return to school and Sunday school, as we carefully gather for in-person worship, with even today portions of the choir singing, woohoo, it feels like a gradual return to normalcy, to me. And I know the great shutdown has been different for all of us. Those of you with children at home, God bless you. I feel like we should just put out cots and pillows and have somebody come in and rub your feet or something. I don't know how you've done it. Those of you caring for a parent, an ill spouse, those of you facing job loss, God bless you all. What a time this has been. Even the most harried among us, though, I'm guessing, have found a gift or two in this time that flowed from the forced choices of the shutdown. Despite the grinding hardship of online schooling, more board games were played, right? The complications of scheduling practices and games were suspended. Weekends freed up. One relative who has for years been traveling every other week for work, his company learned that they could do those meetings over Zoom, and he got to spend enormously more time with his family. As we gradually return to whatever normalcy the world will offer, I hope we can think about the gifts of the shutdown, especially some of the unexpected glimpses of simplicity. Now, I have been a student of simplicity all my adult life. I read Walden in the 8th grade. I was an earnest student of simplicity in college. Small is beautiful was my Bible. Like I said, I was an earnest student of simplicity, but a failed one, a D student at best. It seems like no matter how I tried to commit myself to voluntary simplicity, I'm continually beaten back by involuntary complexity. So perhaps we'd be better off watching a YouTube video by a monk with a more successful track record at living simply. I love those videos. And you know what the first thing they do is when they become a monk? They shave off all their hair. Think of it. No worry about cut or color or barber or stylist, whether you can get by a day without washing it, how your hair looks on camera. You simply have no hair. How many decisions a day does that save you? Same with clothing. They have 2 identical outfits, one to wear, one in the wash. Easy peasy. I'm guessing that we're not going to do that, am I right? Sometimes it helps to listen to somebody who has struggled with these issues. One of my least helpful professors in seminary was a young phenom who had mastered 12 languages by the age of 28. He had no possible way to understand our struggles with Greek. Similarly, you may not know that I taught welding for a few years. Welding. Welding had not come easy to me. I knew I was always going to either electrocute myself or blow myself up. I was so relieved when those classes were done. So imagine my surprise when I, A, had to teach it, and B, found out I'm a pretty good welding teacher because I understood the many ways my students could go awry, and I was better able to help them than had it come easily to me. So in that spirit, let's talk about simplicity. Haven't the glimpses we've seen of simplicity been lovely? The joy of baking. Remember the sourdough bread phase of the pandemic? Or sitting outside bundled up in blankets talking with a neighbor. doing a little Marie Kondo clean out of the closets and garage, making space for something new, or just making space for space. Staring up at the clouds or the night sky with the children in your life. Picking up your guitar again. So what keeps getting in our way of expanding this simplicity? The first thing I think is that we live in cultural captivity to complexity. Salaried employees in our country are expected to work more hours, way more hours, each week with less vacation than any other nation in the entire world. You can look it up, except for Tonga, and Tonga is working on it. Hourly employees increasingly work at the whim of their employers. It's like they're on call as if they were an obstetrician, but they're working at restaurants or in retail. Who would be on call like that for a minimum wage job? No wonder people are quitting in droves. Complexity has become part of our identity. When people say, "How have you been?" I'm one of the ones that says, "Oh, busy, busy, very busy. I'm a busy person," which equals I am a valuable person because I'm busy. Any of you share that or know people who do? Maybe, as the writer of Ecclesiastes thought, it's hardwired in humanity. Or as he suggested, we stay busy out of fear of death. Or we're running on the hamster wheel of envy. Regardless, no. Just say no. Say no to this cultural captivity of busyness by remembering that we are made in the image of God. We are beloved children of God, every one of us, and we deserve better than this. And even God took a complete day off after working for 6 days, or so we are told, yes? Okay, besides the cultural captivity, what else gets in our way? I call it the to-do list creep. About, I want to say the year 2000, I had 2 small churches that I was ministering in, and I had missed a couple of appointments, which was very rare for me. So I thought, well, how can I better keep this list and this calendar? And I got what then was a new invention, one of those electronic PDAs that you kept your calendar on, and you could keep your to-do list on it, you could set alarms for yourself, a very fancy thing. Anyway, within 3 days, this was just before Christmas, I had 92 items on my to-do list. And I thought, no wonder. Hooray to the person who has learned to relentlessly prioritize. Now, I don't mean sorting your list by importance, yet with the understanding that somehow the whole list will get done. I tried that for many, many years, and I find if I focus on program building, I'd fall behind on pastoral care. If I focus on pastoral care, I fall behind on personnel evaluations. If I focus on personnel, I fall behind on expenses, and I am always behind on expenses. Ruthless prioritizing recognizes that you're just not going to get everything done because you cannot do it all. Even the fun stuff, the good stuff, the awesome things. I used to watch a single mother in my Aurora church who was raising 2 boys on her own, and one of the brilliant, loving things she did was remind them, you can't do everything. One sport each. 4 hours of TV a week, and they would have to figure out which 4 they were. You can't do everything. And she raised those boys beautifully. Here's where I love this morning's story about Jesus' very busy day. It looked like he was going to be able to get it all done, right? But no, he left behind people who needed healing, people who needed his presence. He left them to go out into a deserted place to find rest, to find refreshment, to reconnect with his source and his sustenance. He left them behind to go plug into God. And when his disciples found him, they said, "Everyone is looking for you." And Jesus said, "Let's go on to the neighboring towns." so that I may proclaim the message there also, because that's what I came out to do. Even Jesus couldn't do it all and please everybody. But he knew what he was called to do, and to that he said yes. It meant saying no to other things, worthy things. Ruthless prioritizing can mean saying no to some very good things, and that's not easy, is it? I will never forget a sign I saw once in a doctor's office that said, "It's easier to say no when you are answering to a larger yes." It's easier to say no when you're answering to a larger yes. So where are we? We're caught up in cultural captivity of busyness to which we owe a loud and vociferous no, if only because of our identities as beloved children of God. And we can say no to some of the demands of our lives when we are in touch with our larger yes. And we don't have to do this perfectly. Henry Thoreau gets so much criticism nowadays because he didn't live a perfect experiment in simplicity. He didn't isolate himself on an ice floe in the Arctic Ocean. He never claimed to be perfectly isolated. And yes, he would slip into town to have dinner with friends. More power to him, I say. Read the Gospels. Jesus kept getting caught up with teaching and healing huge crowds. Then he'd escape to a lonely place to catch his breath and pray. Over and over and over, he repeated this pattern. Imagine being the one next in line when Jesus decided to get in the boat. Imagine how that was for him and for the people left behind. We don't have to go about this perfectly in order to seek a more simple life. But we will miss the promise of simplicity if we don't give it a try. It's not easy, it never has been. And this sermon is just the merest scratch of the surface. I recommend a couple of books. If you want to take a deep dive, here's an entire book on it called The Holy Way, Practices for a Simple Life by Paula Houston. And then there's this book, Free, Spending Your Time and Money on What Matters Most, by Mark and Lisa Scandrette. And I will be leading a class on this 2 Sundays in November, right after church. Let me close by quoting Houston. She says, "The quest for simplicity is founded in the notion that there is something better, something divine at our core and in our world. We often lose sight of this wonderful fact because we are hopelessly distracted by needless anxiety and the tyranny of desire. There is a better land. There is a better place. There is a better time, and you personally are invited to go there. And there is no better time to start than now." Amen.